All right, and away we go on Niners Nightly. Larry Krueger back with you on the KNBR YouTube channel. Hope everybody's having a fantastic day. I spent most of my day in Santa Clara at Niners practice, talked to Robert Saleh, and it was a good day. It was overall a really, really good day in 49er land. So fired up about that. Wait a second. Wait. Just make sure we have the right things going. Yep, we got the right, everything's cooking. You guys can hear me. Let me get the comments up in the chat. Hello. If you guys can hear me, let me know. But we got a great hour. We got a great hour planned for you here on Niners Nightly as we come to you on this Thursday. We're going to start off with what happened today in Ninerland. Then we're going to do an audio segment. A bunch of the top audio clips from the day, and then we'll get into a little bit on the Cardinals and the matchup coming up on Sunday. But the day started with John Lynch stopping by on KNBR with Murph and Marcus, and they talked about a number of things. I thought it was interesting. John came out and he said he thinks Robert Saleh's head coaching experience has made him, or with the Jets, has made him a better defensive coordinator. And I asked Robert about that today, and he kind of said, well, you always learn from your experiences. He's like, but I'll let other people decide if I'm better or not. He didn't want to touch it too much. Lynch went on to say that he really loves the style of defense that the 49ers are playing this year, where everybody runs to the ball and that they're show up at the ball, with bad intentions, I think is what he said. He wants to see John Lynch played the sport hard. He played smart, he played hard, and he hit hard. He was a physical player. I would imagine the style of play he wants is all 11 guys, show up at the football as much as freaking possible and be as physical and as violent as you can be in the process of getting there and making those plays. So the fact that he likes this defense, he likes the style of play that they're playing, shows that, there's a lot of good things happening for the 49ers on the defensive side of the ball. They talked a lot about the defensive line, and John really likes the group overall. He said, with Chris Kasarik, it's a really well-coached group and that they're fundamentally sound. He also said that, the thing about Kasarik, he's such a good coach that even though there's a lot of youth on this D line, they play really smart. And he thinks that's going to be a major key against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals on Sunday. I do as well. I think the four-man, line has to be a four-man coordinated rush plan. You can't just have four guys rolling, and not that any NFL team ever really does. You always have some kind of a rush plan, but you have to be very disciplined in your rush plan against a guy like Kyler because of his ability to get outside the tackle box and take it to the house. And if you don't think it can happen, it happened last year in the game against the Cardinals early in the year, just like this at Levi's. And he basically just ran right on by Devondre Campbell, and it was like, oh, my goodness, what happened to the Niners' speed at linebacker? What happened to their pursuit ability? Where's Greenlaw? Where's our defense? That's what I think a lot of people were thinking as he rumbled in from 50 yards out, and the Cardinals won that game. They won that game. Niners let them hang around, and then they came from behind and beat the Niners. And the Niners, nightmare year in the division where they went 1-5. That was one of the 5 right there. So a 4-man coordinated rush plan that keeps him hemmed in, that doesn't give him obvious and blatant rush lanes, that puts some heat on him. Maybe you rush him with smaller guys. One thing, the guys who are incredibly mobile and fast, I mean, Kyler's probably the hardest guy to sack in the whole league. I think the best way to do it is to try to rush him with smaller guys. See if you can send some corners at him. This would be a big Chase Lucas game if I was Saleh. Get Chase Lucas out there and send him on some blitzes. He's a great kamikaze blitzer. He's super fast. He's going to get home. He's the kind of guy, and just make sure you tell Chase, don't bother coming back to the sideline if you miss that tackle. No, but I mean, wrap up, really. That's really wrap up and just go as fast as you can, but under control and wrap up. I would definitely blitz Chase Lucas quite a bit this week. Niners are blitzing only 21% of the time through 2 weeks, by the way. They're in the 4-man front about 78%, something like that. And they're going with 5 or 6 rushers, what we would call a blitz, about a little bit over 21% of the time thus far, which is higher than what Robert Saleh did last time he was here, but that's because he had a better front four that could really get it done. So a lot of talk today by Lynch on KMBR about up front about the defensive line. Then the Purdy question came up. What are you going to do with Purdy? Now, Purdy practiced today. He practiced yesterday, practiced again today. It's a game time decision type thing, but I think it's going to be Mac Jones. Purdy doesn't look 100% to me. He doesn't look like he can put his foot in the ground and really cut. And he just looks like he's still a little sore and that he's not quite want to put his foot in the ground as aggressively. So I would go with Mac Jones. We'll see, Purdy's status. It's really, a lot of people asking questions. Oh, Mac's playing well. And, Shanahan, Lynch, they're not entertaining that whole who's playing well. It's Brock Purdy's job. This is not a chaos situation. Even though football can be chaos and football media is often chaos, they're not going to just be like, if Mac plays well on Sunday, anything could happen. No. They have their guy. It's Brock Purdy. They paid him. He's the number one guy. When he gets healthy, he'll play. Now, Brock may decide he's healthy right away, and they may have to say, hey, you're not healthy. And that's what I would do this week. I expect that Brock Purdy is going to tell them Friday or Saturday, hey, man, I'm good enough to go. I can do this. And they're going to tell him, no, you're not. Because if they saw what I saw at practice today, it's not that he looked bad. He doesn't look bad. He just doesn't quite have his feet under him the same way he did prior. So he looks a little, that doesn't look like Brock. So, we'll see. How did he respond today? Well, he seemed like he responded pretty well. He was out there, first of all. If he really didn't respond well, he wouldn't have been out there. And it looks like he's progressing and could if it were Super Bowl Sunday and, they had no backup, it would be one thing, but it's not. It's week 3 and you have a really good backup and he just won last week and you're 2-0 and turf toe can get worse. And if you don't believe me, go ask Joe Burrow. So, take it light on Brock. And let's let Mac Jones play a few weeks. And, think about this. 49ers already, there's a feeling in that room that, man, we can win with multiple quarterbacks. That gives the team more confidence. And, if you're going to wind up playing Mac 5 or 6 games, might as well be early, right? And, and then all the more reason for Brock to come back. He's competitive as he is to try to, could you imagine if Mac gets on a little streak here and plays really, really well? And then all of a sudden you got the super competitive Brock Purdy coming back, trying to equal what Jones has done. I mean, that is what I would call the win-win, the proverbial win-win situation. And if you're a 49er fan, if you're Kyle Shanahan, if you're John Lynch, that's what you should be rooting for. Brock's super competitive. He wants to play. And you know that about him. That's why part of the reason why you signed him to the big money deal. You brought in Mac Jones to compete with him and to have a good second quarterback so that if he does miss 4 or 5 games at some point, you're covered. And, so far you're covered. It looks pretty good. So I'd roll with it. I'd roll with it for another week and see how it goes. So you knew that topic was coming. And Lynch basically said, hey, look, we're going to make an organizational decision later this week. So we'll see. We'll see. I would imagine that's probably tomorrow. Then Connor Colby's name came up, and the Niners put Ben Barch on IR with the high ankle sprain. So it's Connor Colby's job at left guard for the foreseeable future for at least the next month, maybe the next 6 weeks, maybe forever. And Ben Barch was playing well before he went out. So the nice thing is that Lynch pointed out that Iowa's run game is very similar to the Niners' run game. And The moment is clearly not too big for Connor Colby, and he's done a nice job, both as a pass protector and as a run blocker. So the question is, can he do it consistently? Can he do it every week? We're going to find out. Cardinals are next. Calais Campbell and their big defensive line is waiting. Lynch also lauded the consistency of Fred Warner. And, he chose that word. And this, John Lynch played with Derek Brooks, Hall of Famer. And he said he's never seen anybody, as quite as consistent as Fred Warner, which is really high praise for Fred, who is the NFC's Defensive Player of the Week award winner, by the way. So there you go. A little Lynch love for Fred, which Fred deserves it, man. Fred is playing amazing. Lynch also said Alfred Collins had his best game as a 49er. And I talked to CJ West in the locker room today after practice about just, him and Mikkel and Alfred. And he's like, yeah, man, we're all going to get better. We really all want it. And I think we all got better from game 1 to game 2. But Alfred's charge is different than CJ, right? Because they're different body types, different players altogether. Collins' issue is always going to be, can he play with leverage? Because he's 6'5", and then can he keep his, how good of a condition can he get in? Can he play super hard for all those snaps and stay on the field and be durable and be this war daddy in the middle? He's got a ton of talent, and he had his best game, and he's getting better by leaps and bounds, and it's happening before our eyes. Same with Mikkel, same with West. So really excited about those 3 guys right now. Jake Tongas, Lynch brought up Tongas, and he said, hey, man, the guy's doing a nice job. He's versatile. He's like our Y tight end. He's our F tight end. He's our fullback. He's athletic. He can catch the ball really well. He's smart as a whip. They really like Jake Tongas, and Tongas is saving their bacon without George Kittle. There's no doubt. And then, the Mac Jones, hey, what was your evaluation of Mac Jones? And John's like, hey, I thought he did really well. He said by that second series, he seemed like he was in a really good rhythm. And that's what I saw as well. I mean, he looked a little jittery in the first series, and then he settled in, and they look like they can win with Mac Jones. And then Lynch talked about CMC and how, CMC as a receiver was so dominant in this last game. And he said, hey, man, you can line this guy up all over the place. He can run routes like a receiver. He's the son of a wide receiver. Kyle Shanahan, I asked him this week, is CMC the best receiving running back, best route runner you've ever seen from a running back? He's like, yes. And I'm like, far and away. And he's like, yes. So then I mentioned it to Christian. I'm like, hey, Kyle says you're the best route running back ever. He's like, coming from him, that means a ton. So CMC had a fantastic game as a route runner against the Saints. He really looked good. And I like that usage of him more than the week 1 usage because it's more sustainable. What he does is so rare, but he takes fewer hits, I think, when he is used out in the pattern as opposed to just handing him the rock. So I'd love to see them, use him as a receiver a little bit more. He was also asked, Lynch was asked, hey, is CMC lost has he lost a step? A lot of, some people are saying he's lost a step. And first of all, sometimes you got to ask questions. You got to think about what the guy's going to say. Could you imagine if on the KMBR morning show at 50,000 watt radio station, flagship station of the Niners, it's week 3 and the general manager's like, he's lost a step. He's not the same guy. He's not nearly as explosive as he used to be. I mean, that would be a 5-alarm fire. So I kind of laughed at the question, but he's like, no, man, CMC looks explosive. And then John pointed out that the Niners analytics team actually graded out CMC, whatever way they do, whatever they use for their analytics. But they graded out the Saints game as the most efficient game that Christian has had as a 49er. Now that's pretty heady stuff, considering the guy was the offensive player of the year a couple of years ago. And then Lynch finished up talking about how he's really excited about Jordan James and what's coming down the road for Jordan James, the running back from Oregon. They took in the 5th round. They really like Jordan James, and he's got the perfect running back build. He's squatty and thick, and a lot of people feel like Jordan James is a perfect fit for Kyle Shanahan's system. So is he? Is he not? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he is or isn't. I didn't see enough of him in the preseason to say, yeah, you know what, this guy is a perfect fit for what they do. He might be, but I can't really say yet. He's one of the rookies that I really didn't get a feel for this summer. He had some nice runs. There was a 3 or 4 practice run there where he looked like a really natural receiver. So anyway, I'm eager to see him, and Lynch talked him up today. So maybe he's coming. As far as today at practice, Trent Williams didn't practice. He was in uniform in the weight room. At least he didn't practice when the media was there. He may have practiced afterwards. He played last week with a bone bruise. Those are very painful, and he didn't allow a single pressure against New Orleans. Not one. Pretty great performance by Trent Williams. But he was in uniform today, but I didn't see him actually practicing. Jawan Jennings was not in uniform. He also was not practicing. He did do work on the side. Nick Bosa did practice. Christian McCaffrey did practice. Both those guys didn't practice on Wednesday. Brock Purdy practiced again. As I said, didn't look 100% to me. Kyle Juszczyk is in the blue non-contact jersey because of the concussion. Same with Saron Neal. Probably the 2 ones that I was looking for. Spencer Burford did not practice. He had the knee injury. They signed another offensive lineman this week. I'm not sure what Spencer's status is, but Shanahan told us the other day it was day-to-day. And then Yatir Gross-Matos did practice. So if there has been one guy who has been really, really a surprise, it's been Yatir Gross-Matos. He didn't do anything all summer. He didn't play in any of the preseason games. I didn't see him at any of the practices. He was just a total non-factor, yet he made the team. And I think that even made me go, I wonder why he made the team. It's not like he's the most accomplished player of all time, but they knew what they had because this guy looks like a ton next to Mikael Williams inside. And I would say if there's the brightest spot, what's been the brightest spot for the 49ers in the first 2 games? I mean, some people would say Mac Jones. Some people would say Christian looks like Christian. But some people would say D. Winters, right? I think that would come up quite a bit. Connor Colby, there's a number of guys you could go with, but I'll go with Yatir Gross-Matos as just like, he's playing in their NASCAR package as a pass rushing tackle in him and Mikael Williams. It's a wonderfully conceived line. They added Bryce Huff, and Huff looks amazing. He's in his prime. He's a perfect fit for the scheme, and a great speed rusher opposite Nick Bosa creates so much space. For defensive football is about closing space, right? Offensive football is about creating space normally. But when you have a defensive end combo that can really both get to the edges, and you're in that wide 9 to begin with, it just creates a lot of room inside for your interior rushers. And really, that's what makes Mikael and Yatir Gross-Matos so dangerous, is that the more space there is, the more athletic man typically is going to win in those tight quarters. And they are more athletic than everybody they're going against normally. And then if you widen the gaps, then they're way more athletic, and it's way more of an advantage for Mikael and Yatir Gross-Matos. And it shows. It shows. Those guys are looking really, really good. And Huff has had a huge impact. This is the 68th meeting of Niners Cardinals. Niners lead the series 36-31. They're 1.5 point favorites. The 49ers are. The over-under is set at 43.5. Guy Haberman and Tim Ryan will be on the call on the Niners radio network. And of course, the television side is Fox. It's Adam Amin, Mark Sanchez, and Christina Pink, I believe, on the call for Fox. So I wanted to share some sound here. Oh, by the way, so I was asking who's the, I asked Shanahan who's the best receiving running back in Niner history or in NFL history, and he said it's Christian, which I was I wasn't surprised because I knew he was a big fan of Christian, but there's a lot of great running backs both for the Niners and other teams. The Niners alone, Roger Craig, Ricky Waters, Terry Kirby. There's some pretty good receiving running backs right there. You could make an argument that Roger and Waters are among the greatest of all time, right there with CMC. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So who would you, if I said to you guys, who is the best receiving running back of all time? Do you agree with Shanahan? Do you say it's Christian? Or are you an old school Niner fan that's going, no, it's Roger Craig? If you have your thoughts, put it in the chat. We'd love to see what you guys have to say about that. But I want to share some. I want to play some sound. There's a lot of good sounds out there, and then we also want to talk a little bit about the best Niner starting defense of all time. 49er Web Zone put that out. It was pretty good. But yeah, I wanted to play a couple videos that are, a couple of things that from the game that I thought were kind of cool. Here is Fred Warner in the closing minutes of the game, and they put this live mic thing out. I think this is so cool. Here's Fred Warner kind of predicting how the end of the game's going to go in a live mic situation. And we'll let you guys hear this. Let's see if we could. Hold on. There we go. Okay, here we go.
I promise you, I'm so close on a punch-out, bro. It's just I need more of a box for him staying up.
2nd and 4. Rattler to Kamara. Look at that catch. He caught it on his shoulder pad, and then the ball comes out.
No knee on the ground, Shane. Look. That's out. That's a fumble. So, I wanted to have the ball. Nah, I feel you. I'm just saying, we looking at the video. That's a fumble, twin. No knee, no. I wanted to have the ball, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Just great hustle by Fred Warner, too. Never giving up on a play, and then coming in and being aware to be able to take a punch and knock that ball out.
Let's go! It's us!
I told you that shit was coming out.
The live mic there, you get a little taste of the Niners' victory over the Saints. So that's always a good one. Love to share that with you guys. But there was some other stuff that was really good as well. And I thought one of my favorite cuts of the week was Jonathan Gannon. He's asked about Shanahan, and I thought he gave kind of he sounds, now these coaches are never going to say, well, come on, this guy's average. They're always going to kind of butter each other up. But still, this was an interesting answer from Jonathan Gannon about Shanahan. And here it is.
With the 49ers, how would you describe preparing your third year in the division, preparing for a Kyle Shanahan offense, at least with the 49ers? How would you describe preparing and game planning for a Kyle Shanahan offense?
Hard, difficult. Yeah. He's there's a reason he is who he is. He's brilliant. I think he adapts really well during a game, what he sees going on, how defenses are trying to negate some of the things that he likes to do. And he has multiple compliments to, if you're going to live like that, he's going to stress you out a little bit. So he's fantastic. It's hard. It's hard.
Sounded, that sounded legit. That sounded like legit respect for Shanahan there. Called him brilliant. I mean, that's pretty high praise. Now we'll see how, what the whole thing looks like coming up, but high praise. And I thought that was a pretty good cut. Calais Campbell weighed in and they asked him today, hey man, would you rather face Mac Jones or would you rather face Brock Purdy? And I don't know if this is one of those, I don't know if there's a right answer, but here's Calais Campbell, and here's what he had to say. Hold on. There we go. Okay, here we go. Take two.
So as far as their quarterback status goes, Brock Purdy practiced today on a limited basis. Kyle Shanahan said there's a shot to play, although certainly it is far from a certainty. You saw Mac Jones. I'm sure you've been watching tape. You saw Mac Jones last week. Is there a quarterback you'd rather face, or do you literally go into it and go, I don't care, bring on whoever and we'll go play? What's the mindset-wise when you know they have a question at the most important position?
You want a truthful answer? The truthful answer is I'd much rather play against Mac Jones. But at the same time, I mean, it's football. and that's not a shot because Mac is a first-round talent, and, he can do all the things. He just hasn't been that defense. He hasn't been that offense a long time. So, he just is still going through it. But with Brock, I mean, he's a master of that offense. He can make it go. And so, I'm willing to play whoever they put in front of me. We go out there and we go earn it. But, I think we have a little bit of advantage, with just a quarterback who hasn't been there as long in the offense versus somebody who's a master of it.
That's a great answer. I mean, it's a truthful answer from Calais Campbell. I mean, he's being honest there. He's being honest. He's like, hey, some guys would just take the total PC. Hey, you know what? We'll play whoever they got. It doesn't matter to us. We don't care. But he's like, hey, do you want the truthful answer? And the truthful answer is Brock could teach the offense at this point. He's been in it long enough, where Mac's been in it for a short amount of time. But, once again, you put that out there, and in a way, it's kind of a no-win, right? Because you kind of just gave Mac Jones some bulletin board material. They wanted you. They didn't want Purdy. They wanted you. All right. Let's hear another soundbite here. My guy, Will Gavin from Talk Sport in the UK. Love Will Gavin. Love Talk Sport. They do a great job. And they got Chase Lucas for a little conversation. And anytime you can get Chase Lucas doing an interview with a guy with a British accent, it's probably good audio. Here we go. Let's hear a little bit of.
A lot of people in college, a lot of former teammates been asking me.
Look, you just said it. You've done it when you've got a chance to play at nickel, and we've seen it with Upton, the way he flies around, crazy closing speed. Like, what have you made of that young man who's had such an impressive start to life in the NFL?
Man, I've been high on him since the first day I seen him, man. I've had a lot of people in college, a lot of former teammates been asking me about him, especially because, people really don't know how big he is. But at the end of the day, bro, he's a monster on the field. I love everything about him. It's the same thing with Siegel. I don't know who's up there making these picks. I want to say but whoever it is, man, they doing the right things, man. They picking the right guys. And I think the best way to be said is that, they play 49er ball. They exactly who we need in this locker room.
Yeah, I mean, what is 49er ball? I think what it is you show up and you really hit. You're physical. You're a very physical football team. That's 49er ball. Lynch said it today on KMBR. Show up with an angry disposition, 11 guys to the ball. I mean, that's the ideal, right? Everybody run to the football. That's the culture, if you will, that they would like to cultivate in Santa Clara. Everybody runs to the ball. All gas, no brakes, you know. There's also a pretty good little cut here. This is to me, let's hit. This is I always love listening to the master, Greg Cosell. Cosell is so good. And he had a soundbite. And he's talking about Mac Jones. So it's funny. Calais Campbell saying, hey, bring on Mac Jones. And Greg Cosell is saying, hey, I kind of think Mac Jones looks pretty good right now. Here's Greg. We'll play this for you guys. The great Greg Cosell from NFL Films, the matchup show, does a fantastic job breaking down film. This is one of the few guys that really is in the know. Here we go.
I really thought that his touchdown to Jennings early in the fourth quarter, that ended up being the winning margin in the game. I thought that was a really, really good play by Mac Jones. I won't go into all the details because people can't see it. But initially, the Saints showed a man-to-man look. And I think that play was going to be, if it stayed man, I think they were going to throw the wheel route to McCaffrey on the boundary side because he was going to be covered by Pete Werner. But there was late coverage rotation, and they went to cover 2. And so when Mac Jones took the snap, he had to recognize that instantly and realize that throwing the wheel route to McCaffrey was not going to be there. And he immediately, intuitively understood where to go with the football. And he hit Jennings right in the void in cover 2 with kind of a layered throw. I thought that was really, really good quarterbacking. That's the kind of thing he can do. Purdy's really good at that too. He's shown that he can do that in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I didn't notice that on the shift there and that other play or at least that other pattern that Greg thought was there. But I will say this too on that play. Not only was it was kind of a layered throw, but it was also kind of a little bit of a laser. He layered it in there, but it had some zip. And then credit Jennings for just knowing where all the defenders are. He knew as soon as he had the ball in his hands what his plan was. He had one viewpoint, and it was that pylon. He was staring at that pylon. He was going into the end zone, and he took the right angle. And he went untouched. And by the way, if you're wondering who's the Niners' number 1 receiver, don't. Jennings had far and away the highest percentage of the targets. So there you go. Here is my son put this out. Kev, the great Kev Krueger, put this out on. This was the question I asked Shanahan about McCaffrey, and then I think he actually got McCaffrey in here as well. So I wasn't sure if I was going to ask Shanahan about this or not, but we wound up asking him about it. And here's the whole breakdown.
At the turnover, did you think it was the quarterback hitching one too many times and holding it, or is it on the receiver for not getting the separation? What did you guys decide?
No, it was holding on to too long. The play we wanted, where we thought it was going to go, wasn't there. So Mac had to wait a little bit longer to get the look we weren't expecting. So I didn't like the play call. But you had to sit there and take 3 hitches with him that deep. That's usually what I expect to happen. We'd love to get rid of it just 1 hitch earlier.
Yeah.
At the turnover, did you think it was
different soundbite? But there you go. That was Kyle talking about the turnover last week. And I wasn't sure because if you look at the play, the intended receiver looked like Juwan Jennings. And it didn't look like he had much separation, and that might have been why, Mac Jones hitched it 3 times, maybe a 4th time. But as Kyle says, you drop that far deep back. I mean, the offensive line did a nice job protecting him. But still, you can't hold the ball that long. And then if you do, that's it. If you hold the ball that long, you're most likely bad things are going to happen. McAfee weighed in. The Niners O-line got some love from McAfee. And let's share the screen on this one too. This is a good little soundbite. Anytime the Niners offensive line's getting love nationally, that's almost like a national holiday. Let's hear it.
Who's the number 4 offensive line out of week 2?
The San Francisco 49ers.
Wow, undefeated out there. Mac Jones. Who? Mac Jones. Who?
Mac Jones. It was great to see this unit perform the way that they did, because after week 1, they said Trent Williams was dead.
Who said that?
They said Trent Williams isn't the same Trent Williams.
Not us.
Said he stunk.
They did. They said he stunk. Everybody out in Seattle, and I think that has a lot to do with Seattle being better than we're giving them credit for. But this unit back. They looked back. And when you look at this play right here, watch. We always talk about creating matchups. Send the tight end in motion. Leave him for the fullback. Cam Jordan thinks he's getting blocked. Boom, easy reach. Look at 64, Brendel downfield. Keep going, keep going. Put Werner on his ass.
Oh, okay, a little bit after the play, but I do appreciate him driving all the way through the final whistle there. San Francisco 49ers had been a staple of your best performing offensive lines. Then last year, maybe not as much. Now they're back to being who they are. Is that because Christian McCaffrey is the running back?
Let me be very clear about one thing. Christian McCaffrey is almost there. We are going to see the explosive Christian McCaffrey that we used to see. It is almost there. The burst is coming back. Little better after week 1 into week 2. Watch out this week.
Congratulations, San Francisco 49ers back on top 5. Go ahead.
Are they going to be okay without I mean, I know it's the Saints and they're still a good football team, defense, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Kittle and Juszczyk on that play. Not in, obviously, but still able to do it with a backup tight end, backup fullback. Will that, will they still have that success without those two?
Absolutely. I was talking about it earlier with some of you guys before the show, and listen, Shanahan does such a phenomenal job. You could put my 3-year-old son in at quarterback. You could put him in at tight end. You could put him in at fullback. Put him in at running back. He will find success. That's how good this guy is at designing plays.
I love everything about that, and I appreciate the fact that Mac Jones was the guy he wanted.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy's the guy that he loved, fell in love with.
Exactly.
Fell in love with.
He's the other guy, though.
But in high school, Mac Jones was the one down the hall that Shanahan really.
Mm-hmm.
Then he got distracted. Trey Lance, holy shit, look how athletic.
Went to college.
Found something.
Exactly.
Found something nice.
Bounce around a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Got a super bottle and Jimmy G.
Yeah,
Brought him in, did the whole thing, bounce around.
Oh, new talent.
But now he's got a chance to go. What was that trip down the hallway like in high school that I never experienced? Who's the number?
God, I mean, just a little twisted. The whole that whole segment was a little twisted, but there you go. A little bit of Pat McAfee talking about the Niners offensive line. Anytime the Niner offensive line wants to get a little love nationally, we'll let it happen. I thought this was a great. Now it's not a soundbite, but this is Brian Baldinger on Bryce Huff, and Brian Baldinger is obviously based out there in the East. He does a lot of stuff with the Eagles, and it just seems NFL Network, and he's very fair-minded. He watches a lot of film. The film doesn't lie. And here's what Baldy said about Bryce Huff. He's like, the Eagles made a mistake. He's not a linebacker. He's a pass rush specialist. He's got to put his hand in the dirt. He's not an outside linebacker like they wanted him to be in Philadelphia. Robert Saleh knows what Huff is. He closed the game out against the Saints like Bosa did the game before. Nick has somebody who can come off the edge opposite him right now. Huff is better than anybody they had over there at defensive end the last couple of years. That sounds very familiar to what I've been saying for like the last month, which is that Bryce Huff is the best defensive end the 49ers have had opposite Nick Bosa. Period. Better than all of them. Ebukam, Drake Jackson, D Ford, whoever you want to pick. Bryce Huff is better than those guys. He's healthier than D Ford, and he's just better than the rest of those guys. And he gives them such a speed element that it's just, he's impressive. He is impressive. All right, one other one I want to show you here, because I got into this today. I saw this earlier today on Twitter. 49er Web Zone put this out. and I'm going to share the screen here, and you guys can take a look. This is 49er Web Zone's best 49er defensive players by position. All-time starting Niner defense. Thought we could have a little fun with this. And they have 11 guys here. I agree with 7 of them and disagree with 4. Okay. Who am I in lockstep? Ronnie Lott, Patrick Willis, Nick Bosa, Bryant Young, Fred Warner, Charles Haley, Deion Sanders. Those 7, absolutely. Those 7 guys belong for sure, without a doubt, on the 49ers greatest all-time defensive list. Now, the ones I'm going to call attention to, and I've already even made a mistake with the list that I put out on Twitter. I thought it was interesting. 49er Web Zone went with Bosa, Justin Smith, Bryant Young, Charles Haley up front, 2 linebackers, Willis and Warner, and then 5 defensive backs, which is kind of a weird way to do it. You're going 5 defensive backs, and it's not like their defensive backs are that great. I mean, they could have gone with Navarro Bowman and gone with a 3rd linebacker. Instead, they went with a 5th defensive back and put Jimmy Ward on there. That doesn't seem like it makes sense. But their secondary is Ronnie Lott at free safety, Tim McDonald at strong safety, Eric Davis at corner, Deion Sanders at corner, and Jimmy Ward at nickel corner. So they're going with a 4-2-5 49er defense, even though the 49ers never really played a 4-2-5 that much. It was more of a specialty package. And in the era where a lot of these guys played, they played the specialty packages and the sub packages like 10% of the time. So they were mostly a 4-3 defense, or for some of those years, a 3-4 defense. So that's 49er Web Zones. As I said, I agree with Bosa, agree with BY, agree with Haley, agree with Willis, agree with Warner, agree with Ronnie, agree with Deion. The other ones I disagree. My all-time 49er defense, and, I mean, there's guys like from the 49er Gold Rush line that had Cleveland Elam. I don't think people realize how great Cleveland Elam really was. He was like a 2-time All-Pro. He was really, really good. Tommy Hart, really good. Cedric Hardman, really good. So, I mean, those guys are kind of all forgotten because it's like the era before. But here's what I got before the Super Bowl era. I'm going with a 5-2-4. And I'm going Nick Bosa, Bryant Young, Michael Carter, Charles Haley, Fred Dean. That's my 5-man front. Carter's one of the greatest nose tackles that ever played the game. He has to be on this team. Fred Dean is not going to be on the team. No, Fred Dean is on the team. Hall of Famer. Bosa, BY, Michael Carter on the nose, Haley, and Deion. Play them in whatever configuration you want. I don't care. That's my 5-man down line. My 2 backers are Willis and Warner, though, I love Greenlaw and I love Bowman. And there's Dave Wilcox. I mean, that's before my time, but Bill Romanowski, there's some Matt Millen was pretty great there in 1989. But I'll go with Willis and Warner. Okay. And then I went 4-man secondary, Ronnie Lott. And then at strong safety, I went with Deshaun Goldson. I got to give somebody from that Harbaugh era some love. And I thought the Hawk would have been awesome next to Ronnie. So I went Ronnie at free. I could have gone with Jeff. Who am I thinking of? Jeff, the guy from A&M who got hurt. Gosh, now I'm losing my Niners years. The guy who got paralyzed at Stanford. Eddie still had it. Jeff Fuller. I could have gone Jeff Fuller. But I went Ronnie Lott to Sean Goldson. Then I wrote Deion Sanders and Merton Hanks. And I have Hanks at corner. And then Mark Adams, who is a great Niner historian in his own right, said to me, Merton Hanks over Eric Wright. And he's right. There's no question. Eric Wright in 1984 was as good a corner as there was. He was part of the reason they beat Marino in the Super Bowl. Eric Wright was that good. Eric Wright I think he had a broken pelvis. He had some painful injuries that derailed him a little bit later. But he was awesome. Huge, fast, tenacious, awesome. There was a reason that the Niners suddenly stood up to Dallas with Tony Hill and Drew Pearson and all those guys. It's because they had Eric Wright and Ronnie Lott on the corners. And Eric Wright at that point in history was like a freak of nature that nobody had ever seen. He was such a cutting-edge athlete coming out of Missouri, just totally, thoroughly dominating. Long, athletic, unbelievable athleticism. So, yeah, I would probably have to take Mert off and go with Eric Wright. Go with Eric Wright. Then what I would do is I just move Ronnie over to Strong and play Merton. Ronnie and Merton, Deion and Wright. Sorry, Hawk. That's kind of what I would go with right there. So anyway, it's a fun exercise. We didn't even talk about the offense, but just the defense. Justin Smith is great. Don't get me. I love the Cowboy. He was fantastic, but Michael Carter was greater. He was amazing next to Fagan and Holt. And then Haley's just nasty, and you got to have Fred Dean in there. I mean, it's just Bosa. I mean, Bosa's maybe one of the best rushers of his era. So that's how I went with it. That was my breakdown. Who would be on your Niner all-time Niner squad? Feel free to share that with us. But I thought that was an interesting one. What happened to my camera over here? Hold on. Sit tight. Hey, I'm back. All right, so there you go. That's my all-time Niner D. Let's see what the chat has to say. Somebody's like Fred Dean for sure. Fred Dean was so dominating. And the guy was smoking cools at halftime. For that reason alone. I mean, he just was a throwback from a different era. And then Charles Haley has to be there. Come on, Haley was just totally devastating. It was devastating seeing him play for the Cowboys as well. Equally devastating. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Cardinals. Let's get into the matchup a little bit because I think this is an interesting game. The Cardinals come in with their corners really banged up. Max Melton just came back to practice this week, but they've had some injuries at the cornerback spot. They put a corner on IR. Elijah Jones is not 100%. Will Johnson didn't practice on Wednesday. So they're beat up in the secondary. Now they do have two of the best safeties going in Budda Baker and really, well, Budda, they got a nice little collection. The guy from Texas Tech, Dadrion Taylor Demerson, is another really good player. He was a 4th-round pick for Monty Ossenfort in last year's draft. He's a ball hawk. They also have Jalen Thompson, who's kind of a corner safety. He can play that nickel spot if you need to. What makes Arizona's defense really good is they signed Josh Sweat, and last year they traded for Baron Browning, and both those guys are like in their super prime. They're both coming off the edge. Browning is a smaller linebacker who plays a little, now is playing defensive end. So the movement ability, both Browning and Sweat have a speed advantage over Trent Williams and Colt McKivitz. So will the Niners chip those guys? Will they give McKivitz help? Sweat was a really nice addition. That was a really nice get. They also picked up Akeem Davis Gaither, who's a really good college player and had a nice little run in Cincinnati. And when Cincinnati dumped Lou Anarumo, that kind of opened the door for Davis Gaither to jump in free agency. And Monty Ossenfort grabbed him. He's a really fast, skinny linebacker, but he's very productive. So they also have Mac Wilson. Inside, they have Darius Robinson from Missouri and Dalvin Tomlinson. They brought back Calais Campbell. Campbell's still playing at a really high level. That, if anything, the Cardinals are kind of bemoaning the fact that they have to lean so much on Calais Campbell. But they run a 3-4 defense. Tomlinson is the horse in the middle, right? He's the big two-gapper. And then Darius Robinson, could have been a 4-3 defensive end. But it's big, so he can play that 3-4 front, though he's not really your two-gapper type. He's more of a one-gap guy. And then Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell's been playing forever, 6'8", 290-something pounds, great pass rusher, great feet, tremendous motor. I mean, Calais Campbell just timeless, just keeps going. So this is an interesting team. They especially up front. I mean, can the Niners block Josh Sweat and Baron Browning? That's going to be a challenge. Those guys are both playing really good football right now. And then, if it's Mac Jones or Brock Purdy, but especially Mac Jones threw a number of passes last week where they were real great anticipatory throws. That means what I'm saying by that is he was often throwing the ball and releasing the ball before the receiver was into the break. So he's like throwing it to a spot and hoping that the receiver is going to be at that benchmark at the right time. And it takes some reps, and he hasn't had a ton of reps. But I thought he threw some absolute dimes last week against the Saints, and the Saints have a pretty good defense. Adelante Taylor's a hell of a player. So this is going to be interesting. Do the Niners come out and run the ball and dominate the time of possession, complimentary football? Or do they look at the Cardinals and say, you know what? They're down 2 or 3 corners. They're banged up in the secondary. Let's make sure we get their edge rushers blocked. We'll chip the edges all day, and we'll let Mac, pass against this secondary that's down some guys. They're going to be leaning on Catrell Clark, Denzel Burke, Crawford, Elijah Jones, less than 100%. Will Johnson, less than 100% if he goes. So it's going to be another interesting first quarter. I thought last week was interesting from the standpoint of, was Kyle going to trust Mac Jones to throw it? Or was he going to try to copy what Arizona did in week 1, run the ball? Arizona ran the ball really effectively in week 1 against New Orleans. And I thought there was a very good chance that the Niners would try to do the same. But instead, they came out and they dropped Mac back 42 times. And he threw 39 passes, and he looked good doing it. And a number of them were layered timing touch passes. And after that first drive, he looked out of rhythm, but then he got in rhythm and he looked really good. To me, just watching Mac carry out some of the nuances of the game, like handoffs and play fakes and that kind of thing, shows me that he is all in. He understands that his career, if he has a bad year here, he's probably going to be on a different track. If he has a good year here, he's back on the track that he wanted to be on when he came out of Alabama and went 15th in the first round. So he's playing for his career. He's trying to resuscitate his career. And it doesn't seem like there's a better place for him to be than right here, where Sam Darnold resuscitated his career just a year ago. So that's the Cardinals on offense. And then as far as on defense, I should say, that's the Cardinals on defense, a 3-4 front. You really got to concern yourself with Browning. You really got to concern yourself with Sweat. And then you got to know where Budda Baker is. He's just a really special player. And on paper, they had really added a lot of defensive back talent. But now here we are. It's week 3, and they're kind of reeling because of the injuries that they've had in the secondary. So that's, to me, that's going to be interesting. Does Shanahan come out throwing it, figuring what, they're banged up in the secondary and they don't match up, or do they play complementary ball and say, what, we're going to protect our young defense. It's going to be a long, tough day against Kyler Murray, chasing one of the most elusive quarterbacks in the history of the NFL around. Let's run the heck out of it, dominate time of possession, and see if we can have a fresh defense to close things out. Let's talk about the Cardinals on offense. It's an interesting offense. Paris Johnson is a really good young left tackle, drafted in 2023. He's terrific. The rest of that line is just kind of okay. I don't think it's an awesome line by any stretch across the board. Paris Johnson, I think, is really solid. The rest of those guys are just kind of eh. Trey McBride is a tremendous tight end, two-way tight end. He can block, he can catch. He understands how to sit in the soft spot in the zone. He can win against man coverage. I mean, he's the real deal. Sticky hands, big catch radius. This was a prolific receiver at Colorado State in college, and he's just carried that right into the NFL. So McBride is a star. Now, I love the way they've conceived their offensive weaponry. They're using Michael Wilson, who's got good speed, and Zay Jones, who has pretty good speed. They're using those guys as just kind of field stretching elements. Those guys are running the go. They're running the go. They're running the coverage off. And then they're wanting to go underneath to Harrison or to the tight end. And that's really it. Those guys, if you don't cover Zay Jones deep or Michael Wilson deep, Kyler will throw him the ball. But that's not what he's looking to do. He's looking to run off the coverage, create all that space, and then go underneath to McBride or MHJ, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's a total package. He's not Malik Neighbors, but he's the total package. So Kyler went to his first target way less percentage-wise than he has in previous years in the first couple games. So he's showing some growth. He used to be very predictable. He was going to his first target often. Now there's a little bit more nuance to his game. He's a little bit more experienced. He kind of takes his shots. James Conner's their number one back. He looks kind of old. He hasn't really gotten a rolling yet. And Conner's, not a home run hitter, but he's a good back and a power back. And they're going to have to hit him and discourage him early. And then Trey Benson is the speed back. He had a 52-yard run and in week 1. And, Benson and Conner give them two big physical backs. And then you always got to account for Murray. Murray had a 50-yard touchdown run against the 49ers last year, and he went untouched 50 yards. So he makes it a challenge because he will move around. He's moving around with the idea he wants to throw. He's not looking to run, but if you give him an avenue, especially in the first half, he will absolutely take it. So that's to me, it seems like the scouting report to defend their offense is, be ready to run with Zay Jones and Michael Wilson, but never lose track of their mode, which is they want to go to Marvin Harrison Jr. They want to go to the tight end. And then really it's, you've got to bring more than one hat for James Conner and Trey Benson because they're bigger backs. And then you got to wrap up Kyler in space. Now, that last one is the most difficult one because he's so elusive. So I think that's going to be the interesting thing. Nick Bosa said, hey, man, we got a game plan. And I like our game plan. And, we feel confident in our game plan. If it was me, my game plan would be to rush Kyler with smaller guys because he's a hard guy to break down in space and tackle. And if you're 270, 280, 290, 300, good luck trying to get him on the ground. But if you rush Chase Lucas, he'll get him on the ground. If you blitz Darrell Luter, he'll get him on the ground. So that's what I'm looking for, trying to rush the great Kyler Murray, but with smaller guys that potentially can get him on the ground. All right, that is going to do it for us. The hour came and the hour went. Niners Nightly Thursday night in the books. We're back tomorrow night for another edition at 6 o'clock. Join us then. And thanks to all of you guys. Have a great night. And of course, tomorrow is another busy day in Ninerland. Kyle Shanahan will speak. We'll probably get the final verdict on Mac versus Purdy. That's kind of the big question of the day. And I'll be back at 6 o'clock on YouTube for another edition of Niners Nightly. Have a great night.